All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ryan Logan. I am the advertising executive at Amazing Marketing Co. And today we will be going over a common and useful and usually profitable strategy for launch. So when you launch campaigns specifically on Amazon, there's a couple things that you want to be aware of. I'm just going to jump right in. So one of the big things that you're looking for, three combining goals or intertwining goals that you're looking for is really eyeballs or impressions, relevancy, which the data points are going to show is click-through rate, and then conversions. So, and the conversions are sales. Okay, so those three things is you want to make sure that when your impressions are as the most relevant impressions as possible. Okay, so this all has to do with search terms. So you want to target the search terms or the competitor products that make the most sense for you to do so, especially at first when you first launch. Relevancy is such an important detail in the Amazon's algorithm for both ranking and advertising and everything. So you're better off focusing as much as you can on what is in launch, what is immediately profitable, or what is immediately relevant to you, and then kind of sifting out the other things at least at first, so that you are just hitting the most relevant points, so that Amazon can build that data, and it will build a huge and solid foundation for you for now and in the future. Okay, so with eyeballs, you're getting as many people as we can that are relevant to your product. Find long tail opportunities, similar like products. With relevancy, it helps build out the algorithm with relevant data from relevant search terms and products, and it increases the relevancy for the category that you should be in if your browse nodes or your backend keywords are correct, right? And it will also help in scaling for later. With conversions, this is something that is not used enough from the ads perspective. At first you are incentivizing people to come to see your listing, to click on it and buy it, right? So especially at first, this helps to make sure that your listing is on point. If you're trying to optimize and do the best that you can, and at first you start noticing within the first couple of weeks that there's issues, that there's lots of impressions and lots of clicks, but there's no conversions, especially for relevant keywords that you're like, I should be converting for these, you can actually go back to the listing and see what works and what doesn't. Eventually, over time, you'll get enough feedback and data points that you can say, hey, I should actually maybe let me try and change this image to a different image. Let me try and change price. Let me do a change that should help with increasing conversions and relevancy. So relevancy, that's going to be, anyways, yeah, so then the next point that you want to be focused on is that when we start this kind of a campaign funnel that we're going to be doing, it's called a keyword scraping funnel or a keyword harvesting funnel. I call it a pool funnel because it kind of makes the most sense. I'm creating search term pools that I am testing out. So starts off with the broad audience. That's going to be your auto campaign optimization phase, and then you scale with it. And this is what it actually looks like. So with the discovery, this is finding or expanding the audience. You usually start off with an automatic campaign. It can also be, you can use, if you have sponsored display, it's more advanced, but you can use sponsored display audiences, categories, targets, complementary, cross-sale type products, and you can test those things out. For the research phase, it's a little bit more optimized. You kind of have, that this is kind of where it should be. And so you're testing or researching the different variations or the different maybe long tail opportunities or category opportunities within those, and you're researching those to find out if they're profitable and then move on. So that's going to be your broad and or phrase match. So broad technically it tests both a phrase keyword as well as it can test a variation. So if I'm selling a dog shock collar, a broad campaign could actually target and sell to dog shock collar, but it also could target dog shock collar or shock collar for my dog. Whereas phrase match will only target the first one of dog shock collar. So it might do dog shock collar for my pet or for my dog. As long as it has that phrase in there, that's what phrase does. I usually just do broad unless I'm already finding that there's a specific phrase that has so many long tail opportunities. I then kind of create a campaign and move on that. But generally, when I'm doing the research, I personally mainly just do broad for the research because I just want to test out the variations. Now, you can also use sponsored display and other product targeting and sponsored brand campaigns can also fit in this research category. Then, of course, the relevant and profitable. So this is going to be usually your exact search terms, exact match. So you can also sponsored brand videos a lot of times kind of play a role in the relevant and profitable, especially right now. They do a really good job, and then certain ASIN targeting and a few other campaigns that might work. So a few things to expect from this. As far as from the different levels of this funnel, the discovery part of the funnel tends to be lower click-through rates because you're testing out the top of the funnel. It tests out variations within the category. It tests out cross-sale opportunities as far as products, some products similar to yours. It also tests out exact keywords technically, phrases that are really specific to your product, but then ones that are broad or not specific to yours. And then you have and they tend to be a high variable cost per click within that campaign or that part of the funnel, and then a high ACoS because it's testing out so many different things. I usually attribute a lower budget to those. If I want to fill that funnel really fast, I will do a high budget for the first little while. And then as things start to become more optimized, I'll actually change it where it actually gets to a lower and lower budget. Eventually $5 a day, $10 a day, if I already have things pretty well weeded out into a research or a relevant or profitable campaign. In the research, or we're testing the audience, right? So this is going to have the low to maybe a healthier click-through rate, medium variability in cost per click. So if the range of cost per click for some keywords and variations within discovery is here, research is going to be about here. You're going to have a variation depending on maybe the long tail, the length of the long tail keyword, or the mixed variation of that in the broad campaign. Whatever it is, it's going to have a pretty variable cost per click for you. A medium ACoS, maybe a medium to high, depending on the category, and then a low to medium budget is what I'll attribute there. So within the relevant and profitable campaigns, this will have or should have your healthiest click-through rates. You know that if you're doing that, that's something that it's right, it's working, it's relevant for what you're doing, and you want to build that out as much as possible, especially during launch. You want as much relevancy as possible starting out the gate because it builds you such a good foundation and can help with ranking later on. So it has a lower variability in cost per click. So it's the range, right? Discovery, research, and then exact campaigns are the relevant and profitable. It's your range is lower usually. However, it tends to be a higher cost per click because it's an exact match. And then it tends to be a medium to high budget is what we'll do for those. So this is what it looks like. You'll see here category campaign. That's an optional for me. I don't always do that. It really just depends on the needs of the client and what I'm trying to do. But generally speaking, as far as the funnel, you got the auto campaign, and that is going to be my discover, right? That's my discover campaign. I have a product pool campaign. I have a broad pool, and that's going to be, the broad pool is going to be my research campaign, and then the exact pool. So that's how I do it. Like I said, you can instead do maybe a phrase pool as well if you want to, but the phrase pool and the broad pool kind of contradict itself. Or they'll overlap is what I should say. They don't contradict, they overlap. And so usually because of that, in a funnel or a pool funnel campaign like this, I will just do the broad so that it keeps as much of the information in there as possible. So when conversions occur in the auto campaign, I look at those, and if they are relevant and good, I move them over. If they're a product, an ASIN targeting, I move them over to the product pool, and I negative product match that in the auto campaign. If there's a keyword that converts well, I actually take it and I move it to the broad pool, and I put it in there as a broad match, and then I negative phrase it in the auto campaign. So the auto campaign can consistently maybe test out a variation of that, but the negative phrase, it's pretty strict. Like, hey, I'm testing this out somewhere else. I don't really want the auto campaign to mess with that. So in the broad pool, after it's going to test out a ton of variations of the keyword or the search term that we're targeting. When sales occur, what you're going to do is you're going to move it over to the exact pool, and I'll do that even if I have kind of a target for my exact pool, and maybe that's like a 60% or 30% or 25% ACoS. If in my broad pool it's coming in like a 60, I usually will still move it over, personally. If the click-through rates if it's relevant enough for me, and I believe that I can actually get my cost per click down as conversions occur. So, because there are ways to actually show and prove to the Amazon algorithm that your product is more likely to convert to a sale than competitors, and if you compete on that level, then you can actually sometimes get your cost per click down. So, and then I negative exact that exact term that I move over to exact pool, I negative exact it in the broad pool. Because I want the broad pool to continue to test out the variation. I want them to continue to test out the long tail keywords and everything there so that it's as good of a funnel as it can possibly be. This is a very simple strategy. There's even an expanded version of this that I have and that I do, but it's a little complicated, so I'm not going to jump into that. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the walkthrough, so give me just 1 second. All right, so over here we have Campaign Manager. And we're just going to dive right into what I do and how I create the campaigns and how to create them. You'll get here through your Seller Central. If you just click on Advertising Campaign Manager, it'll pull up this main page here. And from here, you will click on Create Campaign. And there's different options here. So there's like portfolios that you can make. We're not going to go into that. We're not going to go into any of this stuff up here as far as other strategies. This is just kind of a simple launch strategy. So the main thing that I'll do is I will come in and I'll just hit Create Campaign and Sponsored Product. So this is this strategy that I'm showing right now. As of right now, it is only a sponsored product strategy. There are ways, and I do end up adding in sponsored brand and display into this as it becomes more complex and the audience gets either honed in more or I need to expand it out. But as for right now, sponsored products is what you're looking for. Here, I will choose a campaign name. Usually I will say like discovery or auto discovery campaign, and then I put in the ASIN name or the ASIN itself so that I know, usually I'll do the ASIN so that I know exactly what campaign or what automatic campaign it is targeting, what the product is targeting. So, and then I'll put in a budget. I usually start with $20 as just kind of a start phase on that. I choose automatic targeting. If I want to do manual campaigns, I'll get into this later, I'll do manual. Something to notice right now is that there are some standard things that start off for different campaigns. When I start an automatic targeting campaign, you'll notice that the campaign bidding strategy changed to dynamic bids up and down. So what this means, there's the dynamic and fixed. And so dynamic bids down here means that Amazon, you give Amazon permission saying, hey, I want to use this strategy so that Amazon will lower your bid in real time to be to be less, if it's less likely to convert to a sale, right? Dynamic up and down is kind of the opposite. So they'll raise your bids by a maximum of 100% in real time and lower it by 100% in real time if it's more likely or less likely to convert to a sale. So instead, you have kind of if you had a fixed bid here, it's saying, hey, we have a variation or a dynamic where we can actually increase the range based on your opportunity for sale. And so with that fluctuation, it can pinpoint a lot more discoverability, right? So you can expand your audience and find an expanded audience there. That's the whole purpose, right? Manual campaigns, I usually do dynamic bids down only because I'm already researching within that or I'm trying to hone them down. There are options where like fixed bids do work really well, but for right now, for this launch strategy, we're not going to do that. The exception to this rule is if at first, like fixed bids is really just impression based. You just want as many impressions as you can, regardless of if they're going to convert to a sale or not. Yeah, so anyways, we're going to go automatic targeting, dynamic bids up and down. I'll put in discovery, and if I'm going to do this right here, so this Bluetooth remote, I'll end up putting this ASIN in it. And some people attach it, sometimes I do, it just depends on my mood. Usually I'll use one of these, and I will say auto. Right, because there are sometimes where I'll do a discovery campaign that's actually not going to be an automatic campaign, it's going to be something else. So I know it's an automatic discovery campaign, and this is the ASIN. And if you want, you can rearrange this. You don't have to do it this way. Or some people will also write in the product name, right? So the selfie stick. So that just helps for you to find it later. Automatic campaign, there is going to be an ad group. So you can name this whatever you want. I kind of leave it the same. I don't find a lot of benefit in necessarily changing my ad group names unless I'm doing a lot of testing within a campaign with a whole bunch of variable ad groups. That's the only time that I do. There are times that you can adjust placement, top of search. So this just says, hey, I'm going to bid up to a certain percentage above at the top of search. You're going to find usually a higher click-through rate. A lot of times with the automatic campaigns, I'll put up to like 15% for the top of search. Scroll down, automatic targeting. So default bid, I can say, hey, if you know, suggested bid is 208, so you can do that. And you can set them by the targeting group in general as well. Suggested bid is this, or you can do the default bid where everything starts off at like the 208 or the 0.75, whatever you want. But this is going to be your bid range. So that dynamic up and down is going to be based off of this. So if this was $1, right, that would mean that, hey, I'm willing to bid $1 in every single one of these targeting groups. So close match, loose match, substitutes, and complements. So these are going to be product targeting right here, and these are going to be search term targeting, essentially. So you have close match and loose match, substitutes, and complements. Okay. And then you would negative keyword target if you have some already for your automatic campaign. I usually put in here competitor names. I usually don't want to show up in search terms that are those. It just isn't good. And then I'll negative product certain ones. Like if I want to negative target my own brand, I'll do that. You can do whatever you want there. Okay. So the next option is a manual campaign, a manual target, and so this would be a broad campaign. So this is going to be my research. So this one I would change it. I would leave most of this, and I would say research. So you have to launch the campaign, and then you come in and put research. So then you create a new one, and you kind of start all over. I would put research, do the same, and I would say broad pool. And then I usually do dynamic down. This one I would change it probably to 25% top of search. I'm going to spend a little bit more to get more data there. It usually has a higher click-through rate and higher relevancy, and I'm already honing in my funnel there and saying, hey, at the top of the search, I get noticed more, I get better click-through, I get better data that I can then make impressions on for my listing. I choose the same product. I add it in, make sure that it's also the same SKU, just in case you have an FBA or an FBM SKU. This one only has an FBA, so I don't have to worry about it. And then the keyword targeting, you'll see here when you come down here, you have options for product targeting. You'll have some for keyword targeting. So if you're doing a product targeting, and I kind of showed that as far as an option in that slide, that you can do a product targeting, and you can do it according to categories or individual products. You can put in there and do ones that are similar that you want to try. And this is what you do for your product targeting pool. You start off with like 3 or 4, not very many. But yeah, stick with the keyword targeting for now, and I am going to undo the phrase. So you'll see all of them that are clicked here, and it has a suggested bid. So something about the Amazon, so this is Amazon suggested keyword. So some things to understand about this. When you first create your listing, you put a whole bunch of like Amazon pulls data from your listing as far as SEO, both in the back end, in the back end, and also on the front end, like the customer facing page. So in your title, bullet points, and they try and build a relevancy out of that, as well as kind of put that together with your category and where you're at. So the options that are going to show up are really those ones at first, when you first launch, are going to be what should be recommended for you. Are, hey, similar like products in your category, do this. But over time, if, for example, let's say that this wasn't a keyword that showed up, but I knew that my tripod does have a remote, it may not show up. I can enter it in as a list. I can enter it specifically. Or over time in the funnel,
if you start making sales consistently with that, because Amazon, like the auto campaign, should eventually still test that variation out, it'll give you a data point that will actually show up here as those conversions even in automatic conversions in campaigns can show your relevancy. It's not just what is in your listing. So you just have to prove that you belong with that keyword, and over time Amazon will actually allow you to do that. So in this ad group and in this campaign, I'm doing one ad group, and it's going to be broad. And then I'm going to choose like 3 to 10 is what I'll usually do. More relevant ones that are relevant to me, and I would say you can either add them all if you want, but if there's too many, it's really hard to sort through them all. I usually go for more root keywords. So here I would be like tripod with remote, selfie stick, Bluetooth, selfie stick, phone, tripod stand. Let's say that if those are the ones, like 4 is good, 5 is good, especially if I'm creating a funnel, then I'm okay with having more options, kind of start with the automatic campaign and then funnel them here into the broad campaign and move on. Especially because it's going to be testing out a ton of variations of this, and it has a suggested bid of 229. I can either keep that or put that lower, whatever I want to do. What I will also make sure to do is put in here, what I will do in the start of this funnel, when I start this campaign, it's going to be a pool, right? So I'm kind of priming the pump for it. I'm getting data going for it right away. And so I will actually take these keywords, because I want to keep track of them, and I will put them in a Google Doc, and I will keep those, and then I will actually make sure to come in and negative exact them right here, because that's what I'm supposed to do in the next part of the funnel, right? Because I'm going to create an exact pool campaign that is going to target these specific keywords as well. And then once I do that, I hit add the keywords. They're there, and I hit launch campaign. Then I start all over, right? So I go and I hit create a new campaign, and it brings you back in here, and I do pretty much the exact same thing. And I will do I'll do profitable, and it will be exact pool. Right? If I have a portfolio, I'll move it to there. This one I'll usually, at first, I'll be like $10, something a little bit less. If I'm doing that exact funnel, like I said, if there's other options, you can do those too. I'll stick with dynamic down. I am willing to go usually with exact up to 50% for top of search. I'm going to target the exact same product. I'm going to stick with keyword targeting. I'm going to choose the exact same keywords, but when I do that, I am not going to negative phrase or negative exact them at all. Okay, these same keywords that are extended in that funnel, I am actually going to take these. So I would take these and actually negative phrase them in the automatic campaign as well, right? Because that's going to follow that slide here. So I would take those same keywords and I would negative exact them in the broad pool, like I said, and then I would negative phrase those same ones in the automatic campaign. And then I would hit launch campaign, and those are created. Over time, I would let those kind of sit for, like I said, when I'm starting this funnel, the automatic campaign is really going to be the biggest data point. I'm really just letting it look for anything that converts. But at the same time, I want to build the relevancy. I want to build the relevancy at the top of my funnel. So these things are going to help a ton. And so I'm going to look for those and expect hopefully good things from that. But here it's going to find out even more opportunity for me as it funnels down. Once a week, I will go and actually make a change. Something to, I kind of went over that, the relevance associated with the Amazon recommended search terms. Frequently bought together will influence that previous conversion history. So as you make more sales, you're going to find sometimes more keywords or better optimized keywords for you specifically that you're indexed for there. If you're doing something manual, if you have the capability and the capacity to actually do a manual study of it, and I won't go huge into this, but this is an option for you, is that you really just locate the root keyword. And I do this a lot, but I'm not going to share it here because it takes it's very, very time intensive, and I'm not going to do that here in this presentation. So, but you essentially find the root keywords, you find 2 or 3, and then from those you find long tail exact ones that you want to do, and you use those as the ones for the broad and the exact campaign, and negative phrase those in the automatic campaign, right? So you just you skip a step, kind of what you did already here with the suggested keywords, but these ones, you'll usually find ones that have a certain target of search volume that you're looking for. And the way that I do this, I do it in a Google Doc. I have the relevant search terms. I have negative phrase matches that I'm doing, negative exact competitor names, etc. An important thing that you need to know about when it comes to the actual campaign itself. So I'm going to exit out of this campaign. This is just simple troubleshooting, and I'll do that for the last roughly 4 minutes of this. Is I'm going to show you kind of how I troubleshoot. I'm going to use an automatic campaign as an example, but I do the same thing for the exact and the phrase. So if we come over here, on the campaign level, I don't often do the negative targeting. I will adjust placements over here. So this is inside the actual campaign. After it's been created, it follows a similar flow. Okay, so you jump in and you come here and you've got the ad groups, the placement, the negative targeting, and the campaign settings and the history. Okay, most of it, I don't really do negative targeting on the campaign level, mainly because I don't put a ton of ad groups. The only time you want to do that is if you have multiple ad groups, which you can have plenty of ad groups testing out different things. And if you notice that just for your product in general, it's just better to just not have, or certain things don't convert well for your product or your brand, then you put those in as the negative targeting here amongst all the different ad groups. But generally, because I only do one, I usually keep them there, and I keep them in a spreadsheet, so I just paste them in. It's really easy for me to do that. But we come into the ad group, and kind of the first month, I usually let it run. I don't do a whole lot of changes unless I'm not really getting impressions, or there's some crisis situations that kind of show up, and I'm overspending, or I need to narrow certain things down. I do that. But you'll see here, there's the ads, and so this shows the product that it's actually targeting. This one is actually the 4-in-1 sticky wallet ring, but targeting. So there's substitutes, close match, complements. I've gone through and paused these already because I don't need those. I wanted this one to be more of a testing out for the complements and the substitutes. So we did pretty well in the close match and the loose match, and I had that funnel pretty well done. So when I was ready to start the product targeting funnel more, I swapped to these so I could test out those variations. As you'll see, I don't get as much with the compliments, as many sales with the compliments, but I do with this. And this is a higher ACoS, 75%. That's high, right? So we look for the sales, we look for them, but if you come here in search terms, even just in the last 30 days, I usually funnel this by orders first, and I look for data points, right? So 4 sales from this one, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2. I look at those as multiple data points. It has a good conversion rate, so it shows relevancy. I have spend associated with it and ACoS. So this is a really high ACoS. I probably wouldn't target this one. I might leave it still for 1 month, but if it delivers a higher ACoS again, it's out. I usually won't do much with that because the conversion rate is low, and even the click-through rate's not too bad. I would actually probably move that one over. Anyways, this is where I would come and do that, and you can export this and pull it out and extract all the ASINs, and then you would go over to the product pool campaign and you would do that. And you would do the same thing for search terms if that's one of the things that you're searching, right? So you would come in here and you would negative target the products that are not converting well. So the way that I do that is usually I will go to where are my biggest spenders. And so you'll see here $13, 16 clicks. It seems to be pretty relevant, or relatively relevant, I should say. But had a good amount of impressions, not very many clicks. Lower spend, I would negate that, especially right during launch. I just don't want to spend an extra $13 there. I'd rather have it find the data points that make sense. Something that I do want to go over, especially during launch. This is an absolutely important thing. It's okay to say no. Okay, when you're first optimizing during a launch, it's okay to say no. And the reason being, sometimes you are competing with products that have way better reviews, maybe better pricing, you've been around longer, and so Amazon tends to give them more of the traffic because they're already tested and proven. That's just kind of the way the A9 algorithm works. There's also trust associated with it from the customers. If there's, like I said, reviews is a big thing, and price, and sales velocity for ranking, etc. So it is okay to say no. This happened to me with a client, so I'll share this really quickly and then I'll be done. They were selling a face moisturizer, and when they first launched, they were not converting for face moisturizer, and so they paused it. And I was happy for them. I was like, good, that's a good thing to do. Even though it was relevant for your category, they paused it because it wasn't converting. And then when they hired us on, I looked at that, saw their current reviews, and I turned it back on, and they started making sales, actually at a good amount, when they already had enough reviews to show that they were there and that people liked the product, right? So when it was in a competitive ratio, and that changes by category. Sometimes there's supplements that have like 10,000 plus reviews, or a product that has 10,000 plus reviews, and it's like you're not competing necessarily for that specific one, but what is the ratio? What's the range that on that first page people are willing to trust? I usually have kind of a range where I'm like, hey, the first 15 you really kind of start off here, and over time the algorithm puts up enough information, you have enough conversions to do it, and it grows. So sometimes I'll actually restart a campaign every 6 months, sometimes a year. Just depends on the velocity and the amount of things they're going through it. But it is okay to say no during launch. It is okay to say no. When you say no for one that is really relevant to you, make sure that the attribution data is in. So I don't go through and I don't make changes every day. If I do, they're small cost per click or top of search, the bid placement, I make those changes. But I don't go through and negate keywords every single day. The reason being is there's attribution, and Amazon has come out and said this over and over and over again, that you should allow anywhere between 3 to sometimes 14 days, depending on the velocity it's kind of going through your account, to make sure that the attributions are correct. So another client that I had, they were going through and making changes like that so soon, or way too soon, and I actually had to show them that it was while I was working on the account, they paused a keyword, and I asked them why, and they said, well, it's not making sales. I said, well, let's see. And we left it paused, and 4 days later, it actually showed up that it was one of the most profitable keywords because the attribution window came back and attributed those sales actually to that keyword. So you just want to make sure that 3-4 days have sometimes gone by before you really negate a keyword that is highly relevant. But it's okay to say no and then come back later and start all over on the funnel. Do the funnel all over again and just see maybe a keyword that you didn't convert for well in the past. Now you compete better for in the customer's eyes. So those are things to look at. That I think is it for me. There's a lot more to these, and we offer a lot more opportunities and information in like our course as well as in other material. Feel free to use this to the best of your ability. I wish you well. It has served us well. It's not a perfect funnel, but I've seen it work consistently enough that it does well. And it's not a fast funnel by any means. It's actually kind of a little bit slower. There are some much faster ones that you can do. Dealing with alpha campaigns or exact alpha campaigns that are very unique and interesting. And I've seen those work, but they're very, very detail oriented, and it takes a lot of time to set up. So if you want more complex ones than that, I'm sure we can help you set those up.